I built my life on a promise to myself that I would never love again. After years of a marriage that shattered my soul, I vowed to protect my broken heart. But then, a distant friend, a quiet observer, stepped into the wreckage of my life. He didn't try to fix me, he simply listened. He saw the scars, but also the strength. He showed me that love wasn't a prison, but a sanctuary. This is our story. My life was a carefully constructed facade, a shimmering illusion of happiness that hid a crumbling reality. For 10 years, I, Minji, had been married to Jae-won, a man whose charm was as potent as his cruelty. From the outside, we were the perfect couple. Successful, attractive, living in a beautiful apartment in the heart of Seoul. But behind closed doors, his words were weapons, his indifference a chilling silence that slowly eroded my spirit. I walked on eggshells, tailoring my every action, my every word to avoid his displeasure. My dreams withered, my confidence evaporated, and the vibrant woman I once was became a pale shadow, a ghost in my own home. My friends, noticing my increasing isolation, offered worried glances, but I always offered a practiced smile and a dismissive wave, too ashamed to admit the truth. My family, traditional and reserved, had always admired Jae-won's ambition and status, making it impossible for me to confide in them. I was trapped, a prisoner in my own marriage, too afraid to leave and too broken to stay. I had convinced myself that this was my lot, that love was inherently painful, and that I deserved nothing more. The thought of leaving, of facing the world alone was terrifying, but the thought of enduring another decade of Jae-won's emotional abuse was a fate worse than death. The internal struggle was constant, a silent war waged within the confines of my own mind. I yearned for freedom, for peace, for a life where I could breathe again, but the chains of fear and habit held me firmly in place. Each day was a battle, a desperate attempt to survive another round of his emotional punches. My spirit was bruised, my soul was weary, and my heart was a tangled mess of pain and regret. The breaking point arrived, not with a bang, but with a whimper, a quiet, almost imperceptible snap of my spirit. It was our 10th wedding anniversary, and Jae-won, after promising a romantic dinner, had completely forgotten. He arrived home late, dismissive and unapologetic, and my carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. Something inside me simply broke. I looked at him, at the man who had systematically dismantled my soul, and I felt nothing but a profound, chilling emptiness. The fear that had paralyzed me for so long vanished, replaced by a cold, unwavering resolve. That night, I spoke the words I had rehearsed 1,000 times in my head. I want a divorce. Jae-won's reaction was a mixture of shock and disdain. He scoffed, believing it to be an empty threat, a pathetic attempt to gain his attention. But my voice, though quiet, held a new, unyielding strength that even surprised myself. The legal process was a brutal, drawn-out battle. He fought dirty, dragging my name through the mud, twisting every aspect of our shared life to make me out to be the villain. My friends, once distant, rallied around me, offering practical help and emotional support, but their pity felt like a brand. My family, shocked and ashamed by the public spectacle, distanced themselves, leaving me feeling even more isolated. The divorce settlement was meager, barely enough to cover a small apartment, but I didn't care. Freedom was priceless. I emerged from the wreckage of my marriage scarred, but, for the first time in a decade, truly alive. I made a solemn vow to myself, a promise etched into the very fabric of my being. I would never again open my heart to another person. Love, as far as I was concerned, was a dangerous illusion, a trap designed to steal your independence and shatter your soul. I was done with romance, done with relationships, done with the pain. I was going to focus on rebuilding my career, on rediscovering the woman I used to be. I was going to be fiercely independent, a fortress of solitude, impenetrable to the vulnerability of love. The emotional scars were deep, a constant aching reminder of the decade I had lost. But beneath the pain, a tiny spark of defiance flickered, a nascent hope for a future free from the shadow of Jae-won. My new life began in a small, sparsely furnished apartment, a quiet sanctuary in a bustling part of Seoul. It was a stark contrast to the opulent prison I had shared with Jae-won, and the simplicity was a balm to my weary soul. I threw myself into my work as a freelance designer, finding solace in the precise lines and vibrant colors of my creations. My days were a blur of sketches, deadlines, and the quiet hum of my laptop. My evenings were spent alone, reading, listening to music, or simply staring out the window, watching the city lights twinkle like distant stars. The solitude was both a comfort and a quiet torment. I had chosen it, embraced it, but sometimes, in the dead of night, the loneliness would creep in, a cold, unwelcome guest. I diligently maintained my vow of emotional abstinence. Whenever a colleague or a well-meaning friend tried to set me up on a date, I politely but firmly refused, armed with a practiced smile and a vague excuse. My heart was a locked vault, the key thrown away, and I was determined to keep it that way. The scars from my marriage were still too fresh, too painful, and the thought of revisiting that vulnerability was enough to send a shiver down my spine. I was content, or so I told myself, with my quiet, orderly existence. I was building a new life, a life on my own terms, free from the dictates of another person. It was a life of cautious independence, a safe harbor where my shattered heart could slowly, painstakingly, begin to heal. But even in this sanctuary, there were echoes of the past, quiet whispers of what might have been. The healing process was slow, arduous, and fraught with unexpected emotional landmines. Some days, the memories of Jaewon's cruelty would ambush me, leaving me breathless and tearful. Other days, a sudden pang of longing for companionship would surface, a dangerous crack in my carefully constructed fortress. But I persevered, clinging to my vow, convinced that true happiness lay in solitude and self-reliance. Amidst the quiet rebuilding of my life, a familiar name reappeared like a ghost from a gentler past: Ji-hoon. He was a distant friend from my university days, a quiet, introspective man with a kind smile and eyes that always seemed to hold a hint of unspoken understanding. We hadn't spoken in years, our lives diverging after graduation, but he had recently reached out after hearing about my divorce through mutual acquaintances. He sent a simple, heartfelt message, devoid of pity or judgment, simply offering a listening ear if I ever needed one. His message was a quiet ripple in the still waters of my solitude, a gentle invitation to a connection I hadn't realized I craved. Initially, I was hesitant. My vow of emotional abstinence extended to all men, even old friends. But Ji-hoon wasn't like the others. He never pushed, never pried, never offered unsolicited advice. He simply existed, a quiet, comforting presence at the periphery of my life. Our interactions began with polite, infrequent text messages, then evolved into occasional phone calls, and finally, into weekly coffee meetups at a small, unassuming cafe near my apartment. These meetings became a lifeline, a gentle anchor in the stormy seas of my recovery. He talked about his own quiet life as a librarian, his love for old books, and his passion for discovering hidden stories within forgotten texts. He possessed a rare quality. He truly listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer quick fixes, didn't try to fill the silence with platitudes. He simply absorbed my words, my pain, my hesitant hopes, with a patience I had never experienced before. With Ji-hoon, I found myself talking about things I hadn't dared to voice to anyone, not even my closest friends. I spoke of the crushing loneliness of my marriage, the slow erosion of my self-worth, and the deep, abiding fear of loving again. He saw the scars, but he also saw the strength, the resilience, the tiny flicker of defiance that still burned within me. He saw the real Minji, the woman who had been buried beneath years of pain. He didn't try to save me. He simply created a safe space where I could begin to save myself. Our conversations were a sanctuary, a quiet balm for my bruised soul. In his presence, I felt a sense of peace, a profound, unfamiliar comfort that began to chip away at the fortress I had so carefully constructed around my heart. He was a beacon in my darkness, a gentle reminder that connection, true connection, didn't have to be a source of pain. My carefully constructed fortress of solitude, built brick by emotional brick after the divorce, began to show cracks under the gentle warmth of Ji-hoon's unwavering kindness. Our coffee meetups, once just polite weekly gatherings, transformed into something deeper, more significant. We started taking long walks through the quiet, leafy parks of Seoul, the rhythmic crunch of gravel underfoot, a soothing backdrop to our conversations. He introduced me to hidden gem bookstores, where we'd spend hours browsing dusty shelves, sharing quiet smiles over shared literary discoveries. He'd bring me small, thoughtful gifts, a rare first edition of a classic novel, a tiny, intricately carved wooden bookmark, or a selection of unique herbal teas he'd found in an obscure market. These weren't grand gestures designed to impress, but rather quiet expressions of his understanding, tailored perfectly to my tastes and needs. I found myself anticipating our time together with a giddy excitement I hadn't felt in years, a dangerous flutter in my chest that both thrilled and terrified me. My vow of never loving again, once an ironclad promise, now felt like a fragile whisper against the growing warmth in my heart. The emotional scars from Jaewon's cruelty hadn't disappeared, but with Ji-hoon, they no longer felt like open wounds. He didn't try to erase my past. He simply created a present that was so gentle, so respectful, that the past began to recede into a manageable distance. He was a stark contrast to Jaewon in every conceivable way. Where Jaewon was volatile, Ji-hoon was calm. Where Jaewon was dismissive, Ji-hoon was attentive. Where Jaewon saw my flaws, Ji-hoon saw my strengths, my resilience, my quiet beauty. He made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in what felt like an eternity. With him, I could laugh freely, cry openly, and share my most vulnerable thoughts without fear of judgment or manipulation. My friends, who had initially been cautious about my renewed connection with anyone, now observed my transformation with a mixture of surprise and delight. They saw the light returning to my eyes, the genuine smiles replacing my practiced ones. My mother, ever observant, began to ask subtle questions about that librarian friend, her eyes holding a new, hopeful glint. The world, once a muted landscape of gray after my divorce, began to regain its vibrant colors. But even amidst this blossoming connection, a deep-seated fear lingered. The trauma of my past marriage had taught me to be wary, to protect my heart at all costs. What if this was another illusion? What if Ji-hoon, despite his gentle nature, eventually revealed a hidden darkness? The vulnerability was exhilarating, but also terrifying. I was teetering on the precipice of falling in love again, and the thought filled me with both boundless joy and a profound, paralyzing fear. The blossoming feelings between Ji-hoon and me had reached a critical point. The unspoken tension, the lingering glances, the accidental brushes of hands, it all hummed with a palpable electricity. We were dancing around the precipice of something beautiful, but my past, like a malevolent ghost, clung to my heels. The fear of repeating my previous heartache was a heavy cloak, suffocating the nascent hope in my heart. One evening, after a particularly profound conversation where I revealed even more of my pain from the marriage, Ji-hoon gently reached across the table and covered my hand with his. His touch was warm, comforting, and utterly non-threatening. "Minji," he said, his voice a soft, unwavering melody. "I know you've been hurt. I see your fear. But I also see your incredible strength, your resilience, your beautiful heart. I want to tell you something I've felt for a long time." My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. My throat tightened and I could barely breathe. But before he could finish, a harsh, familiar voice cut through the quiet cafe like a knife. "Minji, what are you doing with him?" Jae-won. He stood in the doorway, a menacing shadow against the soft cafe lights. His eyes narrowed with a possessive fury. He had seen us together, and his carefully cultivated facade of indifference shattered. He strode over, his presence radiating hostility, and snarled, "I told you to stay away from other men. You're still mine." His words were a physical blow, dragging me back into the nightmare of my past. My blood ran cold, and the old fear, the old paralysis, threatened to overwhelm me. Ji-hoon, however, remained remarkably calm. He stood up slowly, positioning himself subtly between me and Jae-won. His voice was low, steady, and filled with a quiet authority I hadn't known he possessed. "Jae-won-si," he said, using the formal address. "Minji is a free woman. She owes you nothing. You have no right to speak to her like this." The confrontation was a brutal collision of my past and my tentative future. Jae-won, enraged by Ji-hoon's unexpected defiance, became even more aggressive, threatening to expose my scandalous behavior to our mutual acquaintances, trying to shame me back into submission. But Ji-hoon stood firm, a silent, unwavering protector. The argument escalated, drawing the attention of other patrons, until finally, Jae-won, defeated by Ji-hoon's quiet strength and my own newfound refusal to cower, stormed out, leaving a lingering stench of hostility in his wake. I was trembling, tears streaming down my face, but as Ji-hoon gently led me out of the cafe, his hand firm and reassuring on my arm, I realized something profound. He hadn't just protected me from Jae-won, he had protected me from my own fear. He had shown me, in the clearest possible terms, that I was no longer alone, no longer trapped. The confrontation with Jae-won was a brutal but necessary exorcism of my past. It solidified Ji-hoon's place in my life, not just as a friend, but as a protector, a beacon of strength in the face of my deepest fears. The incident, however, also brought to light the depth of my parents' lingering traditionalism and their ingrained concern for reputation. They had heard about the cafe incident through the inevitable whispers of our community. Jae-won, always skilled at manipulating public perception, had made sure of it. My mother, usually reserved, called me in a panicked frenzy, her voice a mixture of shame and genuine worry. "Minji, what are people saying? Why are you seen with this man? It's too soon after the divorce. You're ruining your future." Her words, though rooted in love, felt like daggers, reminding me of the very societal pressures that had kept me trapped in my marriage for so long. My father, calmer but equally firm, emphasized the importance of maintaining appearances, of not inviting further gossip. Their disapproval was a heavy weight, a conflict that now extended beyond my personal emotional landscape to the expectations of my family. Ji-hoon, ever intuitive, sensed my distress. He didn't try to dismiss my parents' concerns, nor did he encourage me to defy them outright. Instead, he offered a practical and respectful solution. He would meet them. He understood that in Korean culture, parental approval was paramount, and he was prepared to face their scrutiny with unwavering sincerity. The dinner was a tense affair. My parents, stoic and formal, grilled Ji-hoon with polite but probing questions about his background, his career as a librarian, which they clearly considered less prestigious than Jae-won's executive position, and his intentions towards me. Ji-hoon, despite his quiet nature, met their gaze with a calm, respectful confidence. He spoke not of grand promises, but of his genuine care for my well-being, his admiration for my strength, and his unwavering commitment to treating me with the respect and kindness I deserved. soft. He spoke of the quiet joy we found in simple things, in books and walks, in shared laughter and understanding. He didn't try to impress them with wealth or status. He impressed them with his integrity and his profound love. I watched, my heart in my throat, as my parents slowly softened. My mother, initially tight-lipped, began to ask about his favorite books. My father, after a long silence, finally offered a small hesitant smile. It wasn't an immediate embrace of our relationship, but it was a crucial step towards acceptance. The evening ended with a cautious truce, a fragile acknowledgement that perhaps, just perhaps, this quiet librarian was a better man than they had initially believed. Ji-hoon's courage and sincerity had not only won over my parents, but also shattered the last vestiges of my self-doubt. In that moment, watching him stand up for us with such unwavering dignity, I knew with absolute certainty that he was the one. The dinner with my parents, though not a complete victory, was a significant turning point. It was a testament to Ji-hoon's quiet strength and unwavering sincerity, and it solidified my own conviction that he was the man I wanted by my side. The last vestiges of fear and self-doubt began to recede, replaced by a profound sense of peace and burgeoning joy. I was finally ready to embrace the love that had so gently, yet so powerfully, blossomed in my heart. One crisp autumn evening, as we sat on a bench in our favorite park, the golden leaves falling softly around us, I knew it was time. I turned to Ji-hoon, my heart pounding with a mixture of exhilaration and vulnerability. Ji-hoon, I began, my voice a soft whisper. After everything I've been through, I promised myself I would never love again. I built walls around my heart so high, I thought no one could ever climb them. But you didn't climb them. You simply showed me there was an open gate I didn't know existed. He looked at me, his eyes shining with an understanding that transcended words. Minji, he murmured, his thumb gently caressing my hand. You didn't need a gate. You just needed to remember that your heart was always free. I took a deep breath, the confession of physical ache in my chest. I love you, Ji-hoon, I said, the words a joyous release. I love your kindness, your patience, your quiet strength. I love the way you listen, the way you see me, the way you make me feel like I can finally breathe again. You didn't just mend my broken heart, you showed me how to live again. A profound silence enveloped us, broken only by the rustle of leaves. Then, Ji-hoon's face broke into a radiant, genuine smile that reached his eyes, a smile I had slowly learned to cherish. Minji, he replied, his voice thick with emotion. I loved you from afar for so long, even before I truly knew why. I saw your light even when you thought it was extinguished. You are the strongest, most resilient, most beautiful woman I have ever known. I love you more than words can say. I want to spend every day showing you that true love is not about possession or pain, but about respect, freedom, and unwavering support. He leaned in, and his lips met mine in a soft, tender kiss that erased years of pain and doubt. It wasn't a passionate, dramatic kiss of a drama. It was a kiss of profound connection, of quiet promises, of a future built on shared understanding. In that moment, under the gentle glow of the park lights, my promise to never love again dissolved, replaced by a new, more powerful vow to cherish this love, this man, and the beautiful, unexpected future we were now building together. The past was no longer a burden. It was a testament to the strength that had led me to this moment, to this man, to this extraordinary love. With our love declared and my parents' cautious acceptance secured, a new chapter of unimaginable happiness began. It wasn't a sudden, blinding burst of joy, but a gentle, steady warmth that permeated every aspect of my life. Ji-hoon became my constant companion, my confidant, and my anchor. We moved in together, transforming my small, quiet apartment into a home filled with shared laughter, comfortable silences, and the quiet rhythm of two lives harmoniously intertwined. Mornings began with Ji-hoon making me a perfect cup of coffee, the aroma filling our cozy space, followed by quiet conversations about our dreams for the day. Evenings were spent cooking together, experimenting with new recipes, or simply curled up on the sofa, reading side by side, the only sound the turning of pages. We found joy in the simplest things: long walks by the Han River, exploring new neighborhoods, discovering hidden cafes, and spending hours in his beloved library, where I learned to appreciate the quiet magic of books through his eyes. He encouraged me to pursue my creative passions, pushing me gently out of my comfort zone, and celebrating every small victory in my freelance design work. My confidence, once shattered, slowly blossomed under his unwavering belief in me. I, in turn, encouraged his writing, listening patiently as he read aloud excerpts from his philosophical essays, offering insights and a fresh perspective. We truly saw each other, not as perfect beings, but as two flawed individuals who found strength and completeness in each other's presence. The scars from my past marriage hadn't vanished, but they no longer defined me. Ji-hoon's love was a constant, gentle balm, healing the wounds that Jae-won had inflicted. He showed me that love wasn't about control or manipulation, but about freedom, respect, and unconditional support. My friends rejoiced in my newfound happiness, commenting on how much I had changed, how radiant I had become. My mother, once so worried about appearances, now often called Jihoon directly, asking for his book recommendations and discussing current events, a clear sign of her growing affection and trust. Our life together was a tapestry woven with threads of quiet joy, profound connection, and a deep, abiding peace. It was everything I had unknowingly craved during my years of solitude, and everything I had feared was impossible after my painful divorce. We were building a future, not just as individuals, but as a unit, a partnership founded on a love that was stronger than any past hurt or societal expectation. Our happiness, however, faced one final, unexpected challenge. Jae-won, after months of silence, reappeared like a persistent shadow, threatening to disrupt the peace we had so painstakingly built. He had lost his job, his reputation tarnished by a series of bad business deals, and he was now consumed by bitterness and a desperate desire for revenge. He began spreading malicious rumors about me and Jihoon, trying to paint me as an unfaithful wife who had abandoned him for a nobody, and Jihoon as a manipulative schemer. The whispers spread through our old social circles, reaching my parents once again. My mother, although more accepting of Jihoon now, was deeply upset by the renewed gossip, fearing for my reputation. My father, always protective, grew visibly angry, worried that this conflict would never end. It was a terrifying echo of the past, threatening to pull me back into the emotional quicksand I had fought so hard to escape. Jihoon, seeing my distress, remained my steadfast rock. He didn't let Jae-won's venomous words or actions rattle him. Instead, he proposed a direct confrontation, not for revenge, but for the sake of our peace. "Minji," he said, his voice calm and resolute, "we have to face him together, one last time. Not to fight, but to set our boundaries, to protect our future." We met Jae-won in a public place, a neutral ground, with my two closest friends as witnesses. Jae-won, expecting me to crumble, launched into a tirade, spewing accusations and trying to provoke a reaction. But this time, I was different. I was no longer the broken woman he had controlled. I stood tall, my voice firm and clear, asserting my truth. "Jae-won," I stated, "our marriage is over. Your actions no longer define me. I am happy now, and you have no right to interfere in my life or Jihoon's." Jihoon, standing by my side, added his own calm but firm warning, making it clear that any further harassment would be met with legal action. The unified front, the unwavering confidence, and the presence of witnesses finally deflated Jae-won. His bluster faded, replaced by a hollow defeat. He realized he no longer had power over me. He stalked away, his final retreat a victory not just for us, but for my long-awaited freedom. With that final confrontation, the last shadow of my painful past dissipated. It was a profound release, a moment of triumph that cemented our bond even further. We had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger, more united, and more in love than ever before. Our future was finally ours, unburdened by the ghosts of the past. The final act of our story was not a dramatic crescendo, but a quiet, heartfelt promise to each other and to the beautiful life we were building. Jae-won's final retreat marked the end of an era and the beginning of another, filled with unbounded hope and unwavering love. My parents, witnessing my strength and Jihoon's steadfast loyalty, finally gave their full, heartfelt blessing. My mother, tears in her eyes, embraced Jihoon as a son, her fears replaced by genuine affection. My father, with a rare, warm smile, shook Jihoon's hand, a silent acknowledgement of his worth. We held a small, intimate wedding by the sea, surrounded by our closest friends and family. It wasn't a lavish affair, but a celebration of resilience, of unexpected love, and of the quiet triumph of two souls who found their way home. My wedding dress was simple, elegant, and comfortable, reflecting the ease and authenticity of our relationship. Jihoon, looking handsome and genuinely happy, met my gaze at the altar, his eyes brimming with a love that spoke volumes. The ceremony was filled with laughter, tears of joy, and heartfelt speeches that celebrated not just our union, but the journey that had led us there. Our life together unfolded in a symphony of quiet joys. We continued to grow, both as individuals and as a couple. I thrived in my freelance design career, my creativity unburdened by fear, and Jihoon's writing flourished, his observations on life and human connection gaining a wider audience. Our home was always filled with warmth, with the scent of his freshly brewed coffee in the mornings, the gentle murmur of our conversations, and the occasional playful chaos of our friends visiting. We spent our weekends exploring new places, visiting art galleries, or simply enjoying the peace of our local park. Every day was an affirmation of our choice, a testament to the fact that love, true love, was indeed a sanctuary, not a prison. We built a life founded on mutual respect, unwavering support, and a profound, quiet understanding that transcended words. I was no longer the broken woman who had promised never to love again. I was Minji, a woman who had found her strength, her purpose, and an impossible, beautiful love with a man who had seen her, truly seen her, from the very beginning. Our story wasn't a fairy tale with a dramatic ending. It was a real, raw, and deeply human journey of healing, redemption, and the extraordinary power of a love born from unexpected kindness. Thank you for listening to our story. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the channel for a new episode every day. We'll be waiting for you. See you in the next story.